We've got a lot of PC hardware news to talk about today, so what are we going to start with? I think the biggest story, I think most interesting at least here, is still in leaks and rumors territory, and I will link all the sources in the video description, but we're getting some more information about what AMD may be targeting with their UDNA architecture. Now, this is what we would expect to be the next generation of Radeon gaming GPUs. Now, if you've paid attention to AMD architecture generation names, like the 6000 series of GPUs is RDNA4, the 7000 series is RDNA3, the 9000 series that we just had launched this year is RDNA4. Now, RDNA4 made huge advancements in ray tracing technology as well as in AI acceleration, which allows for things like FSR 4. So there's been a lot of those changes, and there's also been a lot of discussing like partnerships with PlayStation on Project Alchemist for neural network focused neural rendering techniques, that kind of thing. And FSR 4 kind of being birthed out of that. So what we're getting here is a look at UDNA. Now, if we just had RDNA4, what the heck is UDNA? Well, AMD so far has had two kind of separate branches of their GPU architectures. They have had CDNA for the data center compute-focused stuff, and then they've had RDNA for their Radeon cards, the gaming GPUs. But we've seen in interviews that AMD's plan is to move to a unified architecture, UDNA, for both of them, so rather than keeping them so split. Now, what's going to be the focus with this move to UDNA? Well, it's looking like there's some discussion. Now, I don't like how this is phrased here, so more on this in a second. They're saying PlayStation Next and Xbox Next to be 20% faster in raster. That is going to be misinterpreted here if you just go off this headline. That is not what the leak states. It's not going to be that they're only 20% faster, like the PS6 is only 20% faster than the PS5 in raster. This is not what this is saying, so more on that in a second. 2x in ray tracing and AI, and again, not exactly a direct comparison here. So where is this information coming from? A bunch of outlets have headlines on this. Well, the information is coming from Kepler L2. Now, Kepler L2 is a well-known leaker who absolutely has had a bunch of AMD leaks correct in the past. So that puts some stock in what he's saying here. Although, again, to be clear, that doesn't mean this is for sure correct. We are in leaks and rumors territory. So what he's saying here is that both PS6 and Xbox are using the same GPU architecture, so this is true for both of them. That is in reply to a comment saying, never doubt Mark Cerny, head of the PlayStation stuff. He still believes in the traditional dedicated console. PS6 will double, triple, quadruple down on AI upscaling and ray tracing. He already hinted at that during the PS5 Pro Tech Talk. And Kepler here basically confirming that PS6 and Xbox will be using the same GPU architecture, confirming those kinds of targets. Now, where do we get some more specifics? So how much gains do you expect for UDNA over RDNA4? Kepler's saying probably 20%-ish for raster performance per CU, and this is the key detail, and that this is compared to RDNA4, and around 2x for RT/AI performance. So right there, we can see why this headline would be misleading, because this headline seems to be implying that we're talking 20% faster than the previous generation of consoles, and that's not what it's saying. It's saying 20% faster per CU compared to RDNA4, and PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X and S are not using RDNA4. So, and we're talking per compute unit, and we maybe could have more compute units than the previous generation consoles. So I would actually expect a much more than 20% performance uplift in rasterization compared to the PlayStation 5, for example, because again, this is a per compute unit performance compared to RDNA4. So big difference there. Also, when they say 2 times for RT and AI performance, now this is huge. Again, leaks and rumors, so might not be end up being true. But how would you read this? 2 times compared to RDNA4. Now remember that RDNA4 has already had a massive uplift in ray tracing performance when compared with RDNA3. This would actually be huge if they were able to double that again. Now, it's also very important to note that 2 times the ray tracing performance does not equal 2 times the FPS in a game using ray tracing. This is something that a lot of people seem to misunderstand, so I want to make sure we clear that up. And what this would mean is, so if you're playing a game with ray tracing, every frame takes a certain amount of time to render, but not all of that rendering time is being spent on ray tracing, because the vast majority of ray traced games are not just literally everything is ray tracing. There is some stuff that is not ray tracing. So if you manage to get the ray traced part of that frame time to be twice as fast, it does not mean that the overall frame rate would be twice as fast. Also, numbers like this, it's like, well, at what aspect of ray tracing? Because there's a lot of things that go into ray tracing, and some of them might be more than twice as fast. Some might be less, and depending on what game you're talking about and what you're doing with it. So it's just really important to make those distinctions. Okay, we also have him replying to, also the home console SoC setup is going to have 3D cache, right? And he's saying no. I had seen speculation of this, but I hadn't seen any real credible rumors that it would have 3D cache. And Kepler L2 seems to be pretty confidently saying no to that. And then question being GPU side 64 CUs with 6 disabled question mark, and Kepler saying don't know yet. Now, the fact that in some of these he's replying don't know yet, but the other ones he's giving more concrete answers for, does at least lend more credibility to this than him just giving his opinion based on nothing. Since it seems like he is willing to reply with don't know if he has no idea. Now again, things that are going on behind the scenes can change, and again, Kepler L2 has had things right in the past, but that does not mean that what we're seeing here is necessarily going to be accurate. So this is pretty interesting. It also goes along with we've seen AMD talking a lot about FSR Redstone, which again seems to be pushing a lot more towards the really kind of NVIDIA style ray reconstruction that they're branding ray regeneration, which and neural radiance caching, the idea of getting like kind of neural technologies assisting to make path tracing more doable. And I really think that a lot of this is going on with that Sony collaboration, Project Amethyst, that kind of thing. So it really looks like Sony and Mark Cerny are really wanting to double down on AI acceleration and ray tracing as kind of the future of the next generation of consoles. Since they're partnering with AMD, it makes sense for them to move in that direction to deliver what what they're going to be shipping, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of units of for the hardware, right? So it totally makes sense. Now, we also got some other leaks regarding the next-gen Radeon GPUs, specifically talking about HDMI 2.2 support with up to 80 gigabits per second of bandwidth, which I believe is not the full spec. I think the full spec, is listed here at 96 gigabits per second. So it looks like a little bit cut down, similar to how AMD's had some HDMI 2.1 support, but didn't do it at its full potential bandwidth. So it's looking like that's how things will go here. By the way, these leaks also coming from Kepler L2. So anyway, again, leaks and rumors, all of that. Now, in something that is not leaks and rumors, so those of you who are like, I don't care about leaks, give me actual facts, Daniel, AMD has confirmed on their actual website a Ryzen 5 9600X3D. Now, a lot of people have been hoping for something like this. So to be clear, what this would be is right now we have the 9800X3D, which is an 8-core, 16-thread, 1 CCD gaming CPU, which is awesome, but also quite expensive. And then we also have, if you go into 2 CCDs, you could have one of the CCDs have the 3D V-cache and then have some more cores for non-3D V-cache, which would be more helpful in multi-threaded workloads. That's our things like our 9900X3D and 9950X3D, whether they have 6 cores on each CCD or 8 cores on each CCD. But what we haven't had yet is a more, budget, but we don't know the price, right, oriented 3D V-cache chip. That would be the 9600X3D. And we do have confirmation of it on AMD's own website. where we see it being listed for when we look at AMD Software SI driver for Radeon AI Pro 9700 is compatible with the following AMD Radeon products. And notice the Ryzen 5 9600X3D is being listed here as pictured in this videocards.com article. Again, all of my sources will be linked in the video description. So this would fall in here, kind of in the product stack. So while it would have, it wouldn't have any more cores than our 9600X, the 3D V-Cache has proven over and over and over again in gaming to absolutely be worth it for games. Notice that if you add up the L2 plus L3 plus 3D V-Cache, you'd be going from 38 megabytes of cache in total on the 9600X to 102 megabytes of cache. That's a big jump. Like the 9800X 3D has 104. So while it has, 2 more cores and presumably could have a higher clock speed, because oftentimes the lower stacked products have a slightly lower clock. It's that V-Cache that's really putting in the work on the huge gaming performance. Now, one question mark though is going to be what's the availability of this product? Because last time around with the 7000 series, the 7600X 3D did exist, but barely. In the United States, it was a Micro Center in-person, exclusive. And I think in Europe there was, was it Mind Factory or something like that? I think there was a couple of retailers in Europe that got them, but they weren't really widespread. Now, why wouldn't they be widespread? One of the big things would be that, okay, so why are you producing this in the first place? It's probably that as you're producing 9800X 3Ds, some of the silicon just doesn't quite make the cut to meet the baseline specs of a 9800X 3D. So what do you do with that silicon other than just throw it in the garbage? You save up enough of it to run a release of a cut down version of it, and then you release that. But if there's no incentive to do that, which potentially makes you less profit than if you could have sold them as 9800X 3Ds, then you're not going to produce these on purpose, right? Now, of course, they might choose to produce them on purpose for whatever reason. But I think that's the explanation for why in the previous generation with the 7600X 3D, we had so few of those available. It was because they're not going out of their way to make them. It's just something to do with the chips that couldn't make it as a 7800X 3D. Now, if we switch over to some other topics today, I want to link this video from MX Benchmark PC. So definitely check it out for the full details. But I found this really interesting. I've reported on Unreal Engine's 5.6 update, but have not had a chance to test it out myself yet. But there was a lot of reports of it being much quicker on both the CPU and the GPU for a lot of tasks. Now, what he's showing here is that is indeed the case. Using the Paris demo, testing out both GPU and CPU limited situations are showing marked improvements, as well as some improvements just to hardware Lumen itself, and both of these are running hardware Lumen. Now, one reason why it's important to get improvements both to GPU performance as well as CPU performance is for things like what we saw with the Witcher 4 tech demo, where they were cramming 300 NPCs into a small village while running hardware-based Lumen at 60 FPS on a base PS5, which is a big accomplishment that is probably not possible in the earlier builds of Unreal Engine 5, because, especially with hardware Lumen kicked on, there's a lot of CPU overhead on that. So in other words, it's looking like Unreal Engine 5.6 might have, we're seeing cleaner frame time graphs for one thing, better overall performance on the CPU and the GPU while still looking as good or better. Maybe it's finally getting to the point where the engine actually makes sense. Now, how many years do we have to take to get games actually developed on that version of the engine with better performance and whatnot? But anyway, things are at least looking like they're moving in a positive direction with all of that. Now, what's not moving in a positive direction is scams, guys. So it's looking like, well, we've seen a lot of reports of gutted 4090s being sold as if they had a 4090 GPU in them, but it's actually just the cooler. We're starting to see that now on 5090 cards. Unfortunately. So the way this scam works is basically, so let's say you bought a 5090. What if you take out the 5090 GPU itself, but you have the rest of the cooler? You could then sell that cooler to somebody and pretend it has the actual 5090 in it on some sort of third-party retail site where there's no buyer protections. And then the buyer bought themselves a discounted 5090, which turned out to just be a 5090 cooler and PCB that can't actually do anything. So just, I would say always when buying expensive graphics cards, really any graphics card in general, try to buy from somewhere where you know there is some amount of buyer protection going on, because these scams are out there, and if you spend thousands of dollars on a 5090, it would kind of suck to not actually get the 5090 GPU along with it. Now, speaking of issues with 5090s, we're seeing Unico's hardware reporting that two 5090Ds are also showing 16-pin melted connectors. So basically, the only new news here is, as far as I can tell, this is the first time I've seen it reported on 5090Ds. Now, remember, the D versions are the China exclusive version of the 5090 to meet whatever the various export restrictions are on GPU performance levels, things like that. So it's the China version of the 5090. And it's looking like these are two different versions. There's a 5090D Gigabyte Aorus Master ICE Plus. Anyway, the point is it's running into an ATX 3.0 power connector that is the native 16-pin connector that had been used for 3 years previously with no issue. And then it looks like also a 5090D Gainward plus an ASUS Loki power supply, it looks like. Again, the native 16-pin cable melted on both sides. So again, just more signs that even though like not everybody with a 5090 is having problems, like mine's fine, but this clearly is a problem that is continuing to happen. So here we go. The 5090D seems to also be showing it. Now, in other news on 5090 problems, specifically this Gigabyte Aorus Master version, this has been reported on elsewhere, but I haven't actually covered it on the channel. There's the initial run of Gigabyte models, it looks like they've been fixed after that point, but the initial early run of the Gigabyte Aorus Master cards specifically have had a thermal gel leaking issue. And we're seeing further reports of that. Again, it does seem to be just that initial run. And Gigabyte has issued an official response to this, saying that while the appearance of extra gel might be concerning, this cosmetic variance does not affect the card's performance, reliability, or lifespan. We have already inspected the issue and adjusted the gel to the optimal amount in the following production runs. So Gigabyte is claiming that it's not going to cause you any sort of harm or performance issues, but it's certainly concerning to see crap leaking out of your GPU, and I would hope that they would do an RMA for you or something to make it good, because you certainly shouldn't be spending thousands of dollars on a graphics card, well, really any amount of money on a graphics card, and having it leak thermal paste. But I'm also seeing reports that this primarily happens when they are vertically mounted. So anyway, if you have a Gigabyte Aorus Master 5090, especially one of the early models, and especially if you vertically mounted it, it might be worth taking it out to check if you're seeing this happen, and then if you'd like, contacting Gigabyte to see if they will make good on that for you. Now, speaking of more graphics card issues, this one about 5060 Ti users, there have been a number of 5060 Ti users reporting black screen issues on their 5060 Ti's. Now, there's been various fixes for this, but it doesn't seem like all of those fixes necessarily fix all of the issues for everybody. So I just want to make you aware that Zotac specifically has issued now a guide to update VBIOS for 5060 Ti users experiencing these black screen issues. They're saying it's for users of the Zotac Gaming GeForce 5060 Ti series, both 16GB and 8GB models, who have encountered a blank screen after rebooting the PC. They're saying the root cause is use of a legacy motherboard, so it's on older motherboards, and their solution is to apply a GPU VBIOS update, and then they have some instructions for doing so. Now they're saying to please only do this if you are experiencing this issue. If you are not experiencing this issue, then there is no need to do this. And just because things can go wrong when you update a BIOS, it's better not to do it unless you have a good reason to do it. So only do it if you are experiencing the problem. Now, I want to end with a couple of other quick notes. One is I keep getting asked if I'm going to test out one of these Strix Halo mini PCs. And I will say that I'm not going to buy one for the channel because they are ridiculously expensive, and that's my main concern with Strix Halo APUs. It just seems like they're mostly in just very expensive products, like we're seeing here, launching, I think did they spell it? Isn't it Paladin, not Peland? Where did they go later in the article? Yeah, it is Paladin, not Peland. Anyway, typo looks like in this videocards.com article. Anyway, but like these are very expensive. So to be clear, if you're out of the loop, these are like 40 compute unit, which is absolutely huge GPUs on these APUs. So it would be very exciting to test out the performance on these things. But unless I can source like a review sample or something like that, I'm not sure I want to drop $2,000 on a mini PC right now, since I primarily focus on testing dedicated graphics cards. Mini PCs I do test occasionally on the channel, but usually if I get review samples, it's not something it's not a major focus of my channel. I have a minor interest in it, but not a major interest in it. Anyway, my other concern is if APUs get to be too expensive, why are we buying the APU instead of a dedicated graphics, unless we're talking about a laptop where the APU is maybe a lot more power efficient on battery or something like that? Because that starts to confuse me on these mini PCs. Because if you're plugged in the whole time, you don't have to be as concerned about power usage. For example, in other mini PC news, we're seeing ASUS ROG NUC 2025 with a Core Ultra 9 275HX and an RTX 5080 laptop GPU. This is available. This is also very expensive, just under $3,000. But the point is, no matter how big this APU is getting, an actual dedicated GPU, even at laptop specs and power levels, are still going to have advantages because you're not sharing system memory, which is going to be slower and things like that. So anyway, I have some questions about that whole setup, but I've been seeing comments asking me about testing out Strix Halo, and my main thought is I like to see it in lower priced devices to be more exciting to me. Anyway, but I am looking into my contacts at mini PC places to see if I can source one. Anyway, last thing I want to end with is more Xbox, but also PC related, because there's some speculation on whether the next Xboxes are just PCs. But this is still in rumor territory, so take it for what it is. We're seeing that Xbox is working with Xenia Canary emulator team on a classics program that will bring original Xbox 360 games to current consoles, PC, and Game Pass with enhancements. The big one here being PC. So one of the question marks, if Xboxes switch to just being Xbox branded Windows PCs with optimizations to Windows for functioning more like a console, and with hopefully improved gaming performance. One of the big question marks there is, do you lose access to your Xbox game library that doesn't have PC versions? This would potentially be a solution to that problem, but even if they do get this up and going, my next question is really about licensing. So even if they have the technology to play those games on your Xbox PC, how well is it? How is the licensing agreements going to work with those companies, especially if they already have PC versions and just so the original publishers of games? That's kind of my question mark. Anyway, hopefully if you found today's video useful and or interesting, stay tuned to the channel for all things gaming PC related. I'll still be doing a bunch more head-to-head GPU comparisons, news videos, all sorts of stuff. Huge thank you to viewers, subscribers, channel members who click the join button to directly support financially, which helps me be able to dedicate the massive time into my huge GPU reviews, comparisons, and all of that. Totally understand if you don't have the money to do that, but thanks to those who do, and I hope all of you have an excellent day.